Welcome, everyone, to this week's Check-In with the Doctor. I am, of course, your host, Chris White, and I'm delighted to welcome my guest this week, somebody I've gotten to know fairly well over the past year or so, someone who is pretty active in the PreSales Collective. He's the global director of solutions engineering with a company called Kentik, Mr. Justin Ryburn. Justin, welcome, sir. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm doing well. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Well, glad to have you, sir. And I know you've had a chance to travel a little bit. You've taken some time off, so it was difficult for us to find a week, but I'm glad we finally pinned it down. Now, Justin, in the unlikely event that anybody who may be listening doesn't know who you are, do you mind taking a minute and introducing yourself a little bit more formally?
Sure, absolutely. So I'll try and make my commercial short here, but about going on 25 years of experience here in technology, mostly focused in network technologies. So started off working for some internet service providers on the customer side, and then I've been on the vendor side of the industry for probably at least the last 10 to 15 years. Started off as an individual contributor SE. Kind of worked my way up into a leadership role. Been with the current employer, Kentik, like you said, for about 4.5 years, running the SE team over here. And I think we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff I've been working on here recently that I'm passionate about. But working on growing and building out here at a startup, which has been a new and exciting challenge in my career.
Fantastic. Well, and I know you all have been experiencing quite a period of growth.
Really
Sorry about that. I think I actually had a delay on my side. I don't know if you had a delay on your side as well. So I apologize.
Yeah.
In any event, so to begin with, Justin, how did you said you've been in technology for over 20 years. How did you find yourself in the pre-sales, the solution sales engineer role? What was your journey into that role?
So in pre-sales, so people don't know about this job function much, like at a high school level. But I always knew in college I liked the combination of business and I liked the combination of technology. I didn't really know it's a career path, and so started off my career, like I said, on the networking side as a user of technology. Kind of spoke to the technology passion that I had, but I always felt like there was something missing on the business side, and so when I started engaging with our pre-sales engineering team at our vendors, I really liked what they did and what I understood at least of their day job. And so, I started talking to them about trying to figure out a way to get in with one of these companies to do that role. And that's, I actually, to be fair, initially started off in post-sales at a vendor and then migrated over, but it's that was the path that I needed to take to get to where I wanted to be.
And at what point did you feel a calling to move more into management? And was that sort of a decision on your own, or were you sort of in the right place at the right time and somebody came along and said, hey, we need someone to move into this role and you're the person we have in mind?
I think it was both. It was something that I had a desire to do. And, obviously the opportunity has to be there, has to present itself to be able to do that type of thing. But, I had proven myself as an individual contributor SE and had done some, I don't even want to call them unofficial leadership, but without having a management title, had been kind of coaching and mentoring some of the newer SEs on the team, making sure that they were, going to be successful, that they understood the product, that they understood, the nuances of being in pre-sales and positioning the product in the right light and all of those type of things. And then when the opportunity presented itself to have official management responsibilities, I loved that because I really do enjoy that. Not only do I enjoy, technology and business for myself, but I also love teaching other people about it and trying to help them. And quite honestly, I always say one of the biggest jobs of a pre-sales leader is to remove obstacles for my team so that they can be successful, right? Like that's one of my biggest roles as their leader is to make them more successful, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great attitude. And it's funny you mentioned the training, the education. I heard or I read it recently where as a pre-sales, as a sales engineer, I think the term was a combination of entertainers and educators, right? We're entercators, I think was the term, or edutainers. And I think that's true, right? To a certain degree. And, I talk about, the role as being a performance, or the demo or the presentation being a performance. And I do think there's shades of both. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You've got to be good at the storytelling, right? If you're not, I think by default, technology can be kind of a boring topic, right? If we don't figure out a way to spice it up and lighten it up a little bit. And then I also feel like, if we're not, very targeted in our message, we get bogged down in what the features and the widgets and the knobs do in a given product, and we don't speak to the value that the buyer is going to get out of it. And without that, we're ineffective, right? Very few people buy technology just because it's nerdy and cool and they think it'll work for them. They buy it because it's solving a problem for their business. Right? It's our responsibility as pre-sales engineers or pre-sales leaders to speak to the value as much as we can.
Yep. He or she who buys a shovel doesn't want a shovel.
Right.
They want a hole. Right.
They want a hole. Well, and they probably actually want to plant a tree.
Exactly.
Keep going down that that analogy. It's like they don't walk into the store to buy a shovel. To dig a hole. They do it because of landscaping, right? So if you can sell them a landscaping service, that's really what they're after. But you don't know that until you start asking some discovery questions.
Indeed. So this sort of paves the way, so to speak, for one of the things we were going to kick around. And you mentioned demonstrating the solution in its best light. I know that's something that you're passionate about. Before we talk about sort of the importance and some of the ways in which we can do that, why do you think some of us struggle with doing so?
Well, listen, it's not an easy thing to do, right? I mean, understanding where the customer's coming from, like we just talked about with the whole shovel analogy, like asking the right questions to get to the root of what they're trying to solve is not an easy thing to do. So I think a lot of us struggle with being able to do those discovery questions to figure out what it is they're really trying to get at, what they're really trying to solve, and then being able to talk about our product in a way that it answers the questions or answers the problem that they're trying to solve. I think, we start off with an understanding of our product and what it does and how it works, which is all absolutely important, right? Because we have to be able to do all of that that's kind of like the foundation of the house, right? Understanding the product and how it works and so forth. But then the next level that you have to get to, in pre-sales is, okay, now that I understand how it all works and so forth, how do I explain that in a way to my potential buyer that it's solving the problem that they came into the store to buy, right? And it's not an easy problem to solve for by any means. I think that's why we all struggle with it. I mean, I talk to people all the time in this industry that are still struggling with that,
And what are some of the things that you've learned over the years that help yourself and your teams develop those skills and begin to shift that focus from the tool, the product, to the customer and what they're trying to accomplish? Are there any sort of techniques that you're using or, encouraging your folks to develop?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two things that come to my mind when you ask that question, one is, doing proper discovery, right? I know this is something you talk a lot about, on the show and on your book and when you speak to people, which is how do we do good discovery? How do we ask the right questions to get to the bottom of the problem, right? That's one of them. And the other one is, I think it at least for us and our product, it kind of evolves over time, right? As an early stage startup, when you're just developing a product, you're one of the main things you're doing, right, is trying to figure out this idea, this concept that we have. Is there a market for it? And what is the market for it? And does it fit that market? And a lot of companies, pivot from one idea to another, because they realized the initial vision that they had of the problem that this product might solve, where the market there's something for that's actually got a wider total addressable market, right? We haven't really had much in the way of pivot, but we definitely have over to understand what our total addressable market could be, right? And so I think there's core use cases that we now understand that, rewind 4.5 years ago when I first got here, we didn't necessarily understand, or we didn't even have the product features and functionality to be able to speak to those value propositions, to those use cases. So a lot of it is just, as a company, whether that's marketing or sales or product, just understanding the addressable market and understanding how we can address it with our product and getting that messaging right. And then that leads into, when we do a demonstration, speaking to, hey, we've had customers that have come to us. This was the problem statement that they described to us. Now, this is how they got value out of our product, right? We have case studies that back that up. We have, demonstrations that we can done this before. We've been here, done that. We know, the problem that you're describing. We have a product that speaks to those problems, right?
Yeah. Well, and what comes to mind in hearing you share that is, I've seen a number of people talk about the pre-sales as being such a pinnacle and sort of the epicenter of the organization, and sort of the intersection between marketing and product and sales and professional services and customer success, right? We have a unique insight into all the technology, what sells, how it's being used, and can bring that back to marketing. So what have you implemented specific sort of, communication paths or cadences between the different teams to make sure that information is getting back to product, getting back to marketing, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, it's both exciting and daunting, depending on which side of that coin you look at, to be in the pre-sales team, and for sure to be the pre-sales leader, because there are a lot of interface that we pick up along the way from that are, stuff that marketing can benefit from, that product can benefit from, like you said. So, we've got some processes in place that I think, a lot of companies probably do. We've got a feature request process where we can get some feedback officially back into product on what we're hearing is the most important things we need to develop in our product as we go forward, that need to be on our roadmap. We do call recording software, so we can, this wasn't actually the use case for which we purchased that call recording software. It was more for us being able to keep track of, what happened in a meeting for sales process stuff. But one of the added benefits and one of the side effects of that was, now we have this sort of, data lake of all of these conversations we've had with customers where things come up that we can share snippets with our product team, with our marketing team. They can go in and, look at their own. It does some, AI machine learning stuff where it tries to translate what was said into text, so they can go and search the text. Some of that works well. Some of it, still leaves room for improvement, but the idea is there and the concept's there. And we have leveraged it quite a bit to be able to share snippets, hey, I was on the phone with so-and-so and they said something I've heard a couple times. I want to share it with you. Here's a snippet. You can go hear from, here. So without having to have been on that meeting live when it took place. And that's been super powerful as we grow and scale. Everybody's busy and running a million different directions, to be able to share that feedback internally with other teams.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, that's precisely what you're talking about. For those companies, whose products you're using, you had an initial intended purpose for the sales process. And now you're actually learning that. And in fact, if those organizations are smart, they're paying attention to the fact that their customers are now using it for other things, and they could actually add that to their marketing. Right. Yeah. So what a perfect example, sort of on both sides. Yep. What do you tell to maybe some of the newer folks that enter into the sales engineer, the pre-sales role? And by the way, a lot of newer folks into the pre-sales may not be early in their career. We have a lot of people who are mid-career, very seasoned, very senior IT professionals that make the jump into sales. What are some of the guidance that you give them?
Yeah, and by the way, that's at least historically been the persona that I have targeted for hiring, right? I don't, or haven't had the luxury to date to be able to bring in people who are earlier in their career and spend some time teaching them and coaching them and mentoring them to grow, because I need people that can, hit the street quickly, just because, we're not a huge team yet. So, yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I try to train people when they come in, because they know technology. Most of them know, at least, if it's not one of our competitors, it's technology that kind of overlaps in a Venn diagram with our technology. So they've got a pretty good base from which to draw from on the technology side. Most of what we spend our initial onboarding and training is getting access to our system, how our system works under the hood, where the gotchas are, and then understanding our use cases and our value proposition. And back to what we were just talking about, how do we want to talk about this product? How do we want to message this product when we do discovery, when we demo it, when we work through our proof of values with our customers and so forth?
Now, you just use the term proof of value, and a lot of people use the term proof of concept. Elaborate on this idea of proof of value. Why do you guys use that term?
Yeah, and to be fair, we used to use the term proof of concept too until very recently. There's actually something I've been working on here recently in 2021, which is proof of concept conjures up thoughts of, we're going to hire down, we're going to see what this product does. We're going to prove out that in concept, this product exists and works and does something useful, which isn't necessarily always bad, but doesn't lead to a deal we can close in this quarter, right? Which is, what we're all tasked with doing is bringing in revenue, right? That's why we're in pre-sales. So the pivot that we're making is to the proof of value. Doing discovery, when we're doing the demonstration about, hey, this is the value the customer, the potential customer, the buyer of this product. Have a conversation with them about, okay, we want to test this out with you. We want to prove to you that it does provide this value. Here's the test criteria, the success criteria that we'll measure to in this proof of value that we're going to have with you. It'll be a collaborative thing, and then have a takeaway, right, that we can give to the buyer that says, you said these were your business problems. These are the use cases that we proved out in the testing phase that speak to your business problems. Here's the document on that. And the goal is to, move through the process faster, but then at the end also have something that they can use to go justify the spend, to go justify the business with their management, with their procurement team, whoever it may be, and to have those conversations earlier so we all know what we're trying to accomplish, and we're not just proving that it works in concept and doing some kicking of the tires.
Yeah, it avoids the science project, right?
That's the goal, yeah.
Right? It's not a science. Well, and what I love about that too is, to me, it shows, it sort of says true north, right? Mm-hmm. Like if we're focused on value through the discovery process, through the demonstration process, and then into the proof of value process, right? We have a thread of true north. Now, let me ask you this, because as you know, I run workshops with a lot of sales engineer teams. I run them with both SE and AE teams combined. And I think sometimes there's a challenge even to get our counterparts on the sales side to really focus on the value and the outcomes as well. Do you ever experience that from time to time? And how do you encourage your folks to sort of better engage with their sales counterparts to get them to focus a little bit more on the value proposition as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's like anything else, it's a teamwork thing, right? We have to make sure that our sales counterparts understand what we're trying to accomplish with this too, right? We're not telling you we have a bunch of deals in your pipeline, right? What we're saying is, of the deals you have in your pipeline, let's separate the wheat from the chaff here, right? Let's try and do this prescriptive proof of value. And if the customer can't identify us what they're trying to accomplish, what their business pain points are, then quite honestly, it's not a very well qualified opportunity. That doesn't mean we shouldn't still work it. That just means that's not where we should invest the bulk of our time. That's probably our management that we're going to close in this quarter. If we can't, and they can't articulate what it is we're trying to solve and what the ROI of solving that is going to be, the odds of winning that are a lot lower than the buyer who comes in and says, hey, I have this very specific business problem I'm trying to solve. Yes, Mr. Customer, we have a product that has proven we can in the past that we can solve that business problem for you. That's what we'd love to have, thousands of those in our pipeline, right? That's how we would, explode our growth. We're not quite there yet, but being able to separate those type of opportunities from the people who come in and are like, oh, this product looks pretty cool. I don't really know what I'd use it for, but I want to play around with it a little bit. It's like, okay, we can do that too. That's more what I call educating the market and less of proving out the value. Both, right. But they're two different things we want to talk about when we talk about the health of our business and how we're forecasting.
Exactly. Well, and to your point, one of the things that I talk to a number of my clients about are sort of the different, let's call it demo types, or the different contexts within which we do demo. Sometimes demos are pipeline building activities,
yeah, sure.
Right? Where we're helping generate interest and sort of, open up the sort of the eyes of some people as to what's possible with our solutions versus a more of a true sort of closing type of, right, sales opportunity demonstration. Now, do you? And I think, go ahead.
At least for us and for our product, and I'd say it's probably true for a lot of companies who are growing and developing new areas of their product and have an active, healthy roadmap. There are going to always be areas of our product that are going to have to be less prescriptive, right? We're still doing some collaborative development of new features and new areas of the product with our customers, which are less POV and more design partner type of engagements, right? And so that's, I think, at least for us, is also important that we have that kind of feedback loop, that's not as structured as a POV. But again, going back to what I was saying earlier, that's making sure we understand which falls into which category.
If I may, something you said there triggered another thought, and that is you obviously you sell a technology platform, you sell to technology people. Would you say that by and large, most of the people that your folks are presenting to and demonstrating to have a reasonably high level of sort of IT maturity or maturity in the space, and so therefore they're not necessarily selling new concepts or ideas as much as what the product can do for them? Or is it a mixed bag? Sometimes the focus is a little more on this is what the product can do, but sometimes it's partial education on what's just possible, right, in sort of more modern day technologies. Does the question make sense, Justin?
Yeah, I think so. Let me try and answer that. And if I don't hit the mark, you can, rephrase it. But we absolutely, the majority of the champions that we engage with in the beginning of our sales cycle are the technologists, right? They're the individual contributors. They might have some management responsibilities, but by and large, they're the people who are the technologists within these companies, right? That understand what our product does, that understand what it how it fits into the ecosystem, some of that kind of stuff. And that's actually one of the challenges we've had as a business is, we're not a CRM company. We're not selling to salespeople who, are a profit center for their company, right? We're selling to a cost center in most cases to our, into our customer base. And so we've got to get this is why we're doing a lot of this, trying to get more prescriptive in explaining what the value is so that they can go and justify the spend, right? And trying to figure out an audience with the economic buyer, or at least how do we get to a point where we make sure that the technologist that we're talking to has the support of the business to, it's a budgeted project, or, they have spend that they can allocate to buying a product like this. That's, a challenge we're ever faced with. Does that answer the question?
It absolutely does. And by the way, do you find that sometimes you're the champions that you're working with, that you're quote selling to, or in some cases selling with, do they sometimes need help building the business case.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. I mean, sometimes we need to help educate our own champions. Like, until you get business buy-in, this is not likely to happen. Right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's part of, the whole point of what we're doing here with this proof of value process is we want to ask the right questions and then give the right answers so that they're enabled. Like I said, we want to create a giveaway at the end of the process that they can take back to their approvers, their economic buyers within their organization and say, hey, I found this product. Here's the business problem that I know my team has, that we have as a business. Here's the solution that will solve those. And preferably, here's the ROI for that, right? If we can get it to the point where it's in dollars and cents, it's not always easy to do that. It's not even feasible to do that sometimes. But if we can get to, hey, I've had an outage, that cost me X amount of dollars. This product would have kept me from having that outage. It would have saved me X amount of dollars. If we can get to those type of dollars and cents ROI conversations, then, we can really help justify the spend. Those are much easier conversations to have than when they're much more nebulous around, oh, it's going to save us time and it'll reduce the load on our staff. And that somehow translates into, lower staffing cost or more efficiency where they can focus on the things. Those are little.
For sure. Sorry, Justin. I wanted to interrupt just for a minute and just welcome anybody who may have joined us, since we don't have visibility into sort of who's with us and who's not. So, folks, if anybody has joined, if you care to say hello, wave your hand and say hello, I welcome you to do so. Again, I'm speaking with Justin Ryburn. He runs the solution engineering team for Kentik. And of course, if you have any questions for him, I welcome you to chime in. Justin, I'm gonna shift gears just a little bit. One of the things that you and I have sort of talked about offline. Oh, and there's Ramsey chiming in. So good to see you, Ramsey. Always happy to see your name pop up, sir. You talked about before we started, we were talking about making demos repeatable, making the process repeatable. What are some of the things that you're doing to make things more repeatable? And part of the sort of the second question, how much customization do you typically see like in a given demonstration, which sort of challenges the repeatability, if you follow me?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because that's been the key debate we've had internally for years, right? And again, some of it goes back to an evolution of a product, an evolution of a company, wherein early on everything was a custom demo, right? We were building product very quickly. We're trying to figure out. We had some theories on what the value was to a potential buyer, but each SE, each marketing person kind of had their own spin. I think maybe that's the wrong term on it for it, but they kind of had their own ideas and thoughts on why this would be useful to a customer. And so our messaging wasn't consistent and crisp and clear across all the functions and across all the teams within a given function. And so, we've put a lot of time and effort into being consistent in how we talk about our use cases, whether that's on our website, whether that's in the decks we're using when we're doing our initial meetings with customers, in a post-COVID era here, where we go back to doing shows, the messaging we're going to have in our booth, and then that ties into demos, right? And so one of the things I've worked on over the course of this year is trying to build a demo script to each one of our use cases, right? Where it takes the key value messaging that we have in that use case on our website and in our deck, and then describes that in a demonstration. So it shows the features and the functionalities in the product that tie back to that use case. I don't personally want to go so far as to make this completely robotic, where every SE says the exact same words every time, like they're reading from a script, because I think that won't hit the mark either. Part of what we hire talented people with personalities for is to be able to bring a little of their own experience and a little of their own personality to it. What I do want to have is, whether I deliver the demonstration or one of the people on my team demonstrates that we're all hitting on the same key value messages that we want to talk about as a business, that we know resonate with our customers and solve business problems for them, have solved business problems for them in the past. And then we can back that up with case studies and so forth. So that's really what we're trying to do. And so we built, we recorded a video of someone on my team recording that. And then we loaded it into our LMS. We have each SE going through that right now. And it'll also be part of what we do when we hire new SEs. That'll be part of their onboarding, is to go through that, and we'll have a little certification process at the end to make sure that the knowledge sunk in, and they understand how we want to be demonstrating this product. So that's kind of the way I've best figured out that we can do this, with kind of being somewhere in that middle between everything's custom and everything's totally scripted and robotic. That's kind of the happy medium where I've landed.
Yeah. No, and that resonates with me a great deal. One of the things that I tell the folks that I speak to is, I think that notion of the common theme and the core value proposition is so critical, but you have to make it your own, right? Like, you have to find your own voice, right? And in order for demonstrations to be compelling and engaging, they have to be authentic, right? You have to bring your personality, your personal experience, right, and be fully present in the moment. And that's really what I hear you saying there. So resonates with me a great deal.
Yeah, there's a specific example of that. Sorry, I think there was a delay there. There's a specific example of what you're speaking to there. One of the gentlemen on my team was on the customer side. He was a user of products like Kentik. And part of the reason that his demos resonate so well with his audience is he can speak to, hey, this was the pain that I had when I did your job, right? When I was on the other side of this table and I did your job, this was the pain that I had. This is how this product solves that pain. And it resonates so well because he just comes with such an authority, right? Having been there, done that, walked in their shoes, be able to explain it in the terms that they understand, and with some amount of, I guess, respect for this person's not just trying to sell us a product. This person actually understands what we're going through, what we're struggling with, and can articulate to us how this product will help us solve those problems, right?
So much credibility. It builds so much credibility when you can walk in and say, I get you. I've been there. I've sat in that seat. I've worn those shoes, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I feel your pain, right?
Right.
And I'm here to tell you, there's a better way. Let me show you a better way, right? It's incredibly compelling. Incidentally, Justin, I don't want to let a good question go without, and it's a question about questions. So he said that you mentioned, quote, asking the right question. How do we figure out what the right questions and for which customer or SE? So any thoughts on, quote, what are the, quote, right questions?
Yeah, so this is actually something we're working on as well. I don't own this part of the initiative. One of my peers owns this part of the initiative of kind of redoing some of our process. We're rebuilding our discovery questions right now, right? Like, we have some institutional knowledge, especially for the folks who've been to type of persona for this particular market vertical. These are the things that they're most likely to come to you wanting to solve, right? And these are the questions that you would want to be able, that you'd want to ask to get to that. What are you trying to accomplish when you say you need to buy a shovel, right? What is it that you're really trying to do? Are you trying to dig a hole? Why are you trying to dig a hole? Asking a few more of those questions, like, just as a, for instance, we can monitor traffic in the public cloud, right? I won't go to product. Point is, we get a lot of inbound interest about, oh, hey, I need to be able to monitor my workloads in the cloud, right? Like, you hear about it, in the media. Gartner talks about, cloud visibility is still a black hole for a lot of organizations. Okay, that's a very broad statement. We can solve some problems in there. We have paying customers who that's why they came to us for that. But you really got to dig into that. Like, what does your cloud environment look like? Are you in only one cloud? Are you in multiple clouds? Do you still have on-prem workload and you're migrating? Like, there's a lot of things there's a list of questions that we're putting together that need to be asked in order to be able to figure out, like, okay, I think we can help here, right? And here's how we can help versus, if they're completely focused on storage cost, that's not really in our wheelhouse. That's not really our bucket, right? We're really focused. We're a networking company, so we're really focused on the network traffic. So
yeah,
hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah. No, I think a resounding yes. And, one of the thoughts that I had as you were speaking, I think particularly when the SEs are brought in for, what I would call collaborative discovery with our sales counterparts, there's sort of, to me, there's two things. One, it's, to your point, is to understand the value, the drivers, right? Why are you looking to monitor your cloud, traffic or what have you? And what are we ultimately trying to accomplish? But then we also, as the SE, as the person responsible for actually giving the demonstration, we're also trying to narrow down what is it that we should show, right? And what context should we, particularly organizations that have a very broad and complex platform, there's a lot of different things that we can talk about, right? And we can present our solution in different sort of use case scenarios. Well, which one's going to resonate the most with them, right? So to me, that's an important process, part of the process, and really dictate. Like, to me, the best questions asked by an SE are those that dictate what I actually demonstrate.
Yeah, and that is part of why we're going through this process as well, which I don't think we really touched on before, which is early on we just try and demonstrate everything, right? Like, hey, let's get their attention and let's show them everything this product could possibly do, because we don't know when the next thing we say might stick, right? That might be the thing that they're like, oh my gosh, I have to have this, right? The problem with that is, like, I want to say that thing first, but how do I know to say that thing first until I ask a few questions, right? To figure out what it is that's going to resonate with them. And like you said, our product's gotten pretty broad over the years, and we different industries care about different parts of our product too, right? So, we sell to both what I call digital enterprises as well as service providers, right? And what an internet service provider cares about in our product is going to be completely different than what a digital enterprise cares about in our product. And then within different departments within those organizations as well, right? So that's part of knowing, that's part of why we're putting this list of discovery questions together, is so that we can ask those questions when we do the initial outreach, or they do the initial outreach to us, so that when we come to the demo meeting, we're better prepared. The other thing that I will say, while I think it's kind of tangential to this topic, is we used to do what I call the dash to demo, right? Like, our outbound sales development rep team was what I call selling a demo, right? They were doing outreach, trying to get to talk to somebody, and what they were trying to do is get a meeting scheduled with them to do a demo with the product. But then the SEs come very unprepared to the demo meeting, because not a lot of discovery has been done other than this person's willing to talk to us. And I'm being a little bit over, dramatic. But the point is, if we can get the meeting and get a sales rep who knows the right discovery questions to ask and knows more about our product and what's been successful in the past, then ask question, they can prep for that demo meeting and come in and only show the parts of the product that are relevant to the problem that particular buyer is trying to solve for, as opposed to doing the previous approach where we throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks, right?
Every person who sells software for a complex software or technology company should listen to what you just said. I think I'm gonna take just a clip of the last 90 seconds and reblast that on LinkedIn. I could not agree with you more. Every place I've ever been, it's a rush. You said the dash to the demo, which I love. It's like we're in such a hurry to get to the demo, as if like magic is just going to happen, right? Like, if they just see the product, it's just like, well, of course we should buy that, right? and
Right.
nothing.
And I think if you have a great product, and I believe we do, and I'm sure most of the people listening to this think their company does too, that's why you want to do that. You're like, hey, our product speaks for itself. It's awesome. It's, it's responsive. The UI is slick and it looks neat, and all that is true, right? And I think that's why, at least for us early on, we wanted to get to the demo as quickly as possible, right? It was because of that. But we just talked about what the challenge of that is, as far as not being able to say my audience have the right, and it's something we've kind of learned and evolved over time as a company and as a team.
No, that's fantastic. And it's interesting, as you were talking about discovery, a few other thoughts came to mind. First of all, I almost think of a discovery conversation actually as a funnel itself, right? We start very broad. Absolutely. And sort of try to understand broadly, and then we're trying to narrow down as much as we can. What are you really trying to do? What do you really need to see, right? So that we're not trying to show up with the kitchen sink. The other thought, and you may recall this from one of my talks, but it's the newspaper principle, right? Whenever somebody picks up a newspaper, they typically, and I know a lot of people don't pick up a newspaper anymore, but when we used to pick up a newspaper
on their tablet,
right, we would typically go to I would typically go to sports first, right? That's what I was interested in. My wife would go to travel or food, or you know what I mean, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody consumes a newspaper differently. Mm-hmm. How would we feel if the only way to consume a newspaper was to read it cover to cover and every page in between, and you had to patiently wade through the sections that you didn't care about, right, until you got to the sections you did care about? Well, of course, it's preposterous. So why should our demos be any different? Yeah, right? Absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, Justin, just a few more questions. Then I actually have a little sort of lightning round at the end that where I'll throw you just a few sort of closing questions. But you mentioned, and we've talked a little bit about repeatability, and there's a lot of talk, and frankly, I mean, you see it. There's really an uprising of vendors coming to the market with tools for pre-sales, tools for sales engineers. One is certainly around sort of demo automation and improving. So have you all started to think about the tools that you might benefit from or leverage from your vantage point?
Yeah, that's I've taken demos from a number of those companies. It's on my radar. I'd say it's not currently my focus right now, but I definitely can see where a lot of those products would definitely help. And kind of going back to the dash to the demo thing, one of the things that we talked about as a company and as a leadership team is if we take that to a second meeting, we don't do that demo up front, how many of our prospective buyers are going to push back saying, I really just want to see a demo, right? Like, I understand you're trying to qualify, but I want to see what the product does, right? How do we solve that, right? And I think a lot of these products you're talking about, at least the way I understand them, can help with that, because you can have your team, those demo scripts that I was talking about, maybe we could take that one step further with some work with marketing and polish those and put those into a system where, whether it's on YouTube and on our webpage or through some other sort of system, customer go in and be like, this is the use case I care about, and see a pre-recorded, fully scripted demo of that part of the product. So they've got some of that education, less custom, but at least they get a better feel for who we are and what we do, as opposed to having to do that through the sales cycle. So I think, there is value in that. It's definitely something that I have on my radar as a problem I need to solve sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Incidentally, I have been hearing this a lot, and I sort of have my own sort of approach that doesn't involve tools necessarily, but when a customer, new prospect or customer, inquires and is adamant about, to your point, and this is what I hear all the time, I just want to see something. I just want to see a demo. The term I've been kicking around is discovery in disguise, meaning like, we'll be happy to give you a demonstration, but the purpose of the demonstration in our minds, the purpose is not really to talk too much about the product as much as it is to get you to start talking and opening up. So we'll share a little bit, but we're going to use that opportunity to probe and ask questions and see what we can pull out in the process. Does that resonate with you, Justin?
Yeah. Yeah, resonates. And then I think, I kind of touched on it, but I'll just reiterate an earlier point, which was, if you've got a decent amount of assets of, I'll call them demo videos. That's maybe we should be using a different term here because we're overloading this. But if you have, videos on your YouTube channel or on your website that show off parts of the product and how they work, those conversations that you're getting through your sales channels, through your sales cycle, for people just want to be educated on who you are and what you do, right? They're not ready for a discovery meeting because they quite honestly don't know enough about what you do, what you solve. So you got a chicken or an egg problem there, right? And so, that I think that's the proper way. In my mind, that's the proper way to solve. I call them the intellectually curious people who come in through your sales cycle and just want to know who you are and what you do, is by educating them through, through your website, through your YouTube channel, and having a repo of recordings that you can point them at to say, hey, here you go. If you're just curious about who we are and what we do, here's some material that'd be really useful for you to kind of get up to speed. And then let's have a conversation about, what if that was interesting to you? What kind of business problems are you trying to solve? And then we'll do a much more custom demo that will speak to the problems that you're trying to solve, which will be a better use of your time and a better use of our time, quite honestly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Fantastic. So Justin, I mentioned the lightning round.
Lightning round. All right. What kind of prize do I win?
Lightning round. So the first question, I asked 3 questions. The first question is, did you yourself ever give a demonstration that went horribly wrong or horribly bad? And if so, why?
Oh yeah, many. Early on when I was trying to figure out, when I first joined the company, like what would resonate and what wouldn't, did a lot of demos where we got really into the nerdy, and I was showing all but showing code, right? on how the product worked, because one of the things we were trying to articulate was we're very open. We have, not to get into nerdy details, but we have, APIs, so we can integrate with all kinds of other tools in the environment. And that's one of our differentiators, is our flexibility, right? And so I went too far down that route. And a lot of the early demonstrations I did of our product, going, oh, look, I can show you the JSON blob you'd need to be able to integrate with our tool. The person's going, I don't know what an API is. I don't know what JSON is. I have no idea what this guy's talking about right now, right? And it's like, okay, that was the wrong way to do it.
Yeah, no, that's classic. That's a fantastic example. So second question, we're gonna turn the tables a little bit. You've said that you actually sat through a couple of demos from some of the vendors that are in the space. Do you recall a demonstration that you were on the receiving end recently that was particularly good and particularly engaging? And what about that demo was particularly effective?
Yeah, so actually one of the products we bought earlier this year to help our sales teams, but my team specifically, grow and scale, was an RFP response automation software. I won't name the vendor, but I was really impressed with their demonstration. And again, it goes back to a lot of the stuff we've been talking about, where the first meeting with them, they didn't bring a pre-sales engineer to the call. They just brought a rep to the call. And the rep said, hey, what is it you're trying to solve? How many RFPs do you do? How much time do you think you're spending today? How are you doing it today? Did a lot of that discovery stuff. So we had the second product and how they thought it would be able to make my life easier and make us more efficient in how we do that, they were speaking to the points they had already done the discovery. So it was resonating. We didn't waste a lot, even though honestly, didn't waste a lot of my time showing me stuff that I'm like, I don't care about that. I'm not focused on that. Because there are a lot of things those softwares could do, even the one we bought can do, that I'm not going to leverage that functionality. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I love that story. I mean, first of all, the fact that the AE was able to do some effective discovery of his or herself. And then the demo actually, showed what, and by the way, one of the worst things we can do is do discovery and then not make the demo map back to that conversation. But that's almost worse than not doing discovery at all.
That's almost like disrespectful of the audience's time.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Like, why did I bother Why did I bother?
Right. Why did I bother the discovery if you were just going to give me the same canned demo you give everybody? We might as well just done that in the first meeting, right?
Exactly. All right. So final question. If you could ask me one question, what might it be?
Oh, that's the hardest question so far. What do you think has been the biggest change you've seen? You talked to a lot of organizations. So what do you think has been the biggest change in approach that you see in pre-sales over the last, let's say 3 years or so?
Very good question. There are two thoughts come to mind. I think first is simply just the awareness of the critical importance of pre-sales, and I think an awareness that these skills aren't easy, natural, native, and really require focused enablement, focused training, focused development. And I think for a long time, I think that there are a lot of sales leaders that sort of maybe take pre-sales for granted, take effective sales engineers for granted. Like, well, what's so hard? I mean, just get in there and demonstrate that, just get in there and show the product, right? I mean, come on, like, why is this so hard, right? And I think that I think we're sort of seeing like a renaissance for pre-sales and sales engineers over the past couple of years. And of course, it's more obvious to me now since I wrote the book and because I'm more in that space. But you've got the PreSales Collective, you've got this uprising of all the products. That I think that's it. And then the second part is the automation that's happening, and the vendors that are and the fact that we now have software solution. We have our own software solutions that are helping us solve our problems. A very good example being the RFP, the challenge of trying to maintain the demand for RFPs, right? And scaling our skills and time, frankly. So I think those are the two things that I've seen the most. So does that sort of resonate and sort of correlate with what you're seeing?
Yep, for sure. I agree.
So, and by the way, and I'm sure you see this as well, the competition for talent is at an all-time high and only growing from my perspective.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's gotten, I've been doing this for 4.5 years. It's gotten harder, actually, over the last, 3 years than it was prior to that. There's definitely a shortage of talent at least for what I'm looking for. And I'm starting to have to get a little bit more creative and, what could I sacrifice on as far as my ideal candidate that I can train and I can do proper enablement, and we can get them there without having to come in the door with all the skills and the talent that I need, because there is a shortage of those folks. And there's, a line of companies that are trying to hire the same talented pre-sales people that have very similar skill sets.
Yep. It's a very good time to be in the profession, but it also comes with it a number of challenges, certainly for, leaders like yourself who are trying to recruit and retain, key and good people. So
the other thing I'll just add to your answer to my question that I've seen over the last 3 years, obviously you can't ignore COVID, right? And the change that COVID has brought about. I think there were a lot of organizations that didn't do a lot with virtual meetings, right? They didn't do your Zoom, your Google Meet, your WebEx, your Microsoft Teams, whatever your online platform is. They were very much a, show up, sit down in a conference room, meet with people face-to-face type of organization. And that has kind of gone by the wayside. Some of that may come back. I think it's going to be slow to come back. I think some of it may never, right? I think a lot of companies have realized, hey, we can have a different type of relationship with our vendor where we don't have to travel. We don't have to have them show up. We can meet with them over a web meeting, knock out a conversation in a faster amount of time and understand what we need without, some of the overhead. So I think, a lot of this is going to be here to stay, I guess is where I'm going with this.
I completely agree. And I do appreciate you mentioning that, because Justin, those of us who have been in this profession for a long time, we've been doing online meetings for decades. I mean, I got my first WebEx account, I think in 2005, right?
Yeah.
So, doing web demos. Now, it wasn't until the pandemic that I always expected to be on video, so that, and my wife jokes at me. She's like, now when you aren't traveling, which is most of the time, you get up every day and take a shower and put on like a clean pair of clothes, right? Whereas before, if I wasn't traveling, I could be in a t-shirt, all day, right? I could be in gym clothes all day. So, it's a totally different game. So, Justin, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy guy.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Enjoyed the conversation. Any just sort of closing thoughts or comments as we sort of put a bow on today's conversation?
No, thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it. The only thing I would just add is I think everything, all of what we're saying just adds up to, like you said, it's an exciting time to be in pre-sales, to be in this industry. It's not without its challenges, but that's part of the reason it's exciting and it's fun is, we get to go and try and figure out how do we solve these. And that's why I'm always appreciative of the work you do and the work that the PreSales Collective and some of these other organizations are doing, is because it brings all of us together to talk about, like, we are all struggling with similar challenges. How did you solve it? How, what are your best practices? Let me learn from you, right? Like, why reinvent the wheel when there are other people dealing with the same things that maybe they have a better idea than I do on how to solve these. So, that's what gets me excited. So, again, thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
And I think it's fair to guess that you would welcome anybody to reach out to you on LinkedIn with any comments, questions that they might have of you. So fantastic. Yep. Well, Justin, thank you again. And folks, thank you for those of you who stuck around, or any of you who caught the recording. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Justin, be well, sir. I'm sure we'll talk to you again. Cheers.